I want to make a correction to something I've said in other videos regarding Passover. Someone contacted me this morning and pointed out a couple of scriptures. So when you're reading about the Passover in Exodus 12, for example, and Pharaoh comes in and he comes in at night and tells Moses, up, your people need to go. It seems as though the people are leaving immediately that night. But what John pointed out to me is that in Exodus 12:10, it says, God commanded the Israelites to not leave any of the Passover lamb until morning. If some of it is left till morning, you must burn it. And then in 12:22, it says, take a bunch of hyssop, dip it into the blood in the basin, and put some of the blood on the top and on both sides of the doorframe. And then he says, none of you shall go out of the door of your house until morning. And so what John was asking me is, how does this fit with leaving that night? It doesn't say that here, and he's absolutely right. So we know that the Israelites ate the Passover that night, and that Pharaoh did tell Moses to leave that night, because Exodus 12, verse 8 says that same night they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. And then verse 31 says, during the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, up, leave my people, you and the Israelites, go worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds as you have said and go, and also bless me. And God, has said that, when they're eating the Passover, they're to eat it with their sandals on, their cloak tucked into their belt, their staff in hand. It sounds like they're leaving because they're leaving in haste. And it sounds like they're leaving immediately, but they actually did not. So I really appreciate that John pointed this out to me. So it says, verse 17, celebrate the festival of unleavened bread, because it was on this very day that I brought your divisions out of Egypt. And sometimes the unleavened bread, the festival of unleavened bread, is being used interchangeably with Passover, or Passover is being used for unleavened bread. And so I did have to test this to make sure that he was talking about the 15th day of the month. But listen to what he says. Celebrate the festival of unleavened bread, because it was on this very day that I brought your divisions out of Egypt. Celebrate this day as a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. So he clarifies that it's on this very day. Now we just need to figure out what is that day. He goes on to say, in the first month you are to eat bread made without yeast, from the evening of the 14th day, so we know that would already be the 15th of the month, until the evening of the 21st day. For 7 days, no yeast is to be found in your houses, and anyone, whether foreigner or native born, who eats anything with yeast in it must be cut off from the community of Israel. So we know that he's actually talking about the 15th day. I apologize for that. It sure did make it seem like Pharaoh came in, told the Israelites, get out, and they plundered the Egyptians and they left that night. But John is right. This is absolutely clear that they left on the 15th day of the month, which is the first day of the festival of unleavened bread. One more thing that I want to make clear, and I discovered this, I think last year I discovered this, because it's clear that we're not supposed to be eating any leavened bread, any bread with yeast during the festival of unleavened bread. But we also see earlier on in Exodus, verse 8, when talking about the night of the 14th at twilight, when the lamb is being sacrificed, God says that same night they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. So my understanding previously was that the bread without yeast began on the 15th of the month. Certainly for the festival of unleavened bread, it does, but it also applies to the 14th of the month. So from the 14th of the month through the 21st, you're eating bread made without yeast. I believe that the reason why he separates that out is to help you to understand that it was actually the 15th of the month in which the Israelites were brought out of Egypt, and that they left in haste and did not have time to add yeast to their bread. So he's making a specific point. Nevertheless, it is from the 14th until the 21st that we eat bread made without yeast. For 8 days, we're eating bread made without yeast. Thank you for listening, and please discern this with God.